You won't believe the conflagration that just broke out in Season 13 of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. It all began when Spice and Scrappy decided they were sick of whispers and positioned Mendeecees squarely in the middle of the crowd. Fans instantly felt that something was going to blow up, and the suspense was so intense that you could feel it through the TV. Rumors that Yandi and Mendeecees may not be as picture-perfect as they seem have been circulating for weeks, once showed up. However, nobody anticipated that the moment would become this intense, direct, and raw. Imagine having friends over at a table and the conversation suddenly becomes pointed. Everybody's gaze is fixed on you as the grins fade. That's precisely what took place. Spice asked directly about the status of his marriage as she pushed forward, her voice breaking through the din. Scrappy immediately jumped in, intensifying the problem and preventing Mendeecees from avoiding the obvious. At home, viewers were in disbelief. Some even referred to it as the most stunning confrontation of the season. What followed wasn't your typical reality TV conversation. Everyone was left wondering whether one of the longest-running couples on the program is actually in danger of breaking up after this heartbreaking moment. The room felt heavy with air. The instant Spice gave Mendeecees the piercing gaze that only she could provide. Scrappy leaned back in his chair, waiting for the right opportunity to apply his own pressure. There was no music, no jokes, no distractions, just pure energy emanating between them. Mendeecees attempted to maintain his composure by changing his jacket and displaying his signature calmness, but it was clear that even he was unable to ignore the weight of the inquiries he was receiving. Spice had endured too much patience as she watched Yandi flaunt her flawless appearance, while rumors continued to circulate that her marriage was beginning to falter. Thus, she seized the opportunity and asked directly what everyone had been eager to know. "How are things actually going for you and Yandi?" The DCs then sighed softly, as if a storm were about to break out. At first, he spoke softly, as if he hoped no one would actually hear him. He acknowledged that things had been challenging and that he wasn't even sure how to characterize their current situation. The remark was so evasive that it just caused additional eyebrows to be raised and increased the volume of the quiet surrounding him. Slowly shaking his head, Scrappy leaned forward and spoke with more bite. "You've been suppressing it for years, bro. Everyone is aware of that. However, it doesn't appear like you are certain of nothing at the moment. What's the real deal then?" As this was happening, fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. Within minutes, social media was ablaze with people expressing their disbelief and labeling it the most awkward moment of the season thus far. Mendeecees' right to solitude was being defended by some, while others accused him of concealing something and insisted that his more was conveyed by his hesitancy than by his words. The man who had established himself as dependable and devoted appeared to be holding a secret too big to divulge in that instant. Spice wasn't going to accept him giving him only partial answers. She reminded him that Yandi had established her own kingdom, engaged in combat in front of cameras, and held herself as if nothing could disturb her, and she drew closer, her voice sharper now. "However, if she's that powerful and why does it seem like you don't even know where you're at? Right there by her side?" Spice pressed. You could see Mendeecees move uneasily in his seat as the question went deep, as if he had been torn between exposing a painful reality and defending his pride. Carly, who never misses an opportunity to stir things up, then arrived. She smirked and twirled her drink before asking, hurling her words like gasoline onto a blaze that was already blazing. Tone. "So, are you together or not?" The whole table paused for a moment, the stillness resonating like a drumbeat, all eyes on Mendeecees, waiting for him to confirm or refute the rumors. His jaw clenched and his face contracted as though he wanted to say something, but was unable to force himself to do so. Rather, he whispered that it had been 20 years, that family was family anyway, and that sometimes the connection didn't require informative, but the absence of a clear response simply increased mistrust. Scrappy and Spice looked at each other. They both agreed in silence that something wasn't quite right. Fans made wild guesses about what might actually be happening outside of the show. Some said they saw Yandi posting mysterious messages about patience and loyalty on the internet. Others asserted that during recent appearances, Mendeecees had been seen without his wedding band. Whether it was true or not, the commotion merely intensified, adding to the impression that a significant disclosure was imminent. The energy in the gathering continued to change. Friends who used to laugh together with ease now looked at each other with suspicion. I'm not sure if pushing harder would cause everything to fall apart. The edge was still there, but Spick's voice grew softer. Mendeecees was reminded by her that nobody was ever truly protected by keeping the truth hidden for very long, and eventually the truth was revealed. As if attempting to muster the fortitude to confront the flames, Mendeecees leaned back and rubbed his palms together. He acknowledged that bearing the burden of expectations had worn him out, and his tone cracked with a mixture of irritation and tiredness. Being the family's pillar and the one with all the answers wasn't always easy, and occasionally he simply wasn't aware of how much more than he could manage. The group fell silent in awe at this candor. For a brief period, the typical back and forth and arguing gave way to the unvarnished picture of a man exposing his soul. Scrappy acknowledged the anguish in his friend's voice with a cautious nod. Spice, however, was not yet content. She desired clarification, a declaration, or something that would either affirm that the marriage was in doubt or demonstrate that the reports were untrue. Naturally, Harley was compelled to exert more effort. With a cunning smirk, she leaned closer and whispered just loudly enough for everyone to hear. I believe Yandi has already made up her mind. She may simply haven't told you yet. Everyone was astonished, their mouths hanging open in shock as the words hit them like a bomb. The charge was harsh, the sort that nobody anticipated hearing it aloud. Carly, however, delivered it effortlessly. Voices overlapping, the room erupted in commotion as some tried to defend Yandi, while others added to the argument that perhaps the power couple wasn't as stable as they wanted the world to think. Mendeecees remained still, his face a mask of mixed feelings, torn between sadness and rage. The atmosphere was twisted into something else by the lingering rumors of treachery, much heavier than anyone could have imagined. The questions continued to mount as the night wore on. Everyone was irritated and anxious because Mendeecees refused to be honest when his friends asked it. The man at the center of it all appeared more vulnerable than ever, as what had begun as a friendly chat had now devolved into a full-fledged interrogation. His next words might either patch up the flaws or entirely destroy the image, and the entire room was aware of it. Voices rose and stillness fell in lightning-fast waves, like thunder chasing lightning, creating an almost unbearable tension in the room. Mendeecees had never been the type to discuss personal matters with others. A person who allows Spice snapped her head at Carly after making a remark that sparked a heated argument. You're messy. You are aware of that. But Spice retaliated. She was secretly relieved that the subject had been posed, as evidenced by the sparkle in her eyes. However, Messy is obviously not providing us with the true answer, so perhaps he is what we need at this moment. This incident gave the online fans a field day. Like wildfire, their responses are flooding in. While some criticized Carly for being insensitive, others laughed at her audacity and referred to her as the queen of instigations. Within minutes, hashtags pertaining to the couple's reported breakup went viral, demonstrating how eager people were to witness rifts in a marriage they had formerly taken for granted. On the other hand, there was no fan laughter inside the chamber. The air was thick with layers of mistrust as well as interest. Leaning forward once again, Scrappy's voice became more solemn. You see, I've known you for a while. I haven't witnessed you stumbling like this before, so let's be honest, buddy. Is this a front now? Or are you and Yandi really the partnership we all believed you to be? Mendeecees' stance finally showed the weight of the inquiry as his shoulders drooped a little. After a lengthy silence, he spoke, his voice now hushed, almost exhausted. Andy, you are loved. There's no doubting that. However, love does not imply perfection. Love isn't always enough to mend the rifts. We have history. We have children. We acquired recollections. Additionally, that makes it even more difficult. However, I am unable to sit here at this moment and tell you where we should be. Once more, the room fell silent. The confession is being processed by all. Spick's face grew softer. The fire in her remarks, however, did not. You see, many are afraid to acknowledge that. It's possible to love someone and still be enamored with them. However, the problem is that Yandi has never lost interest in you. Even when everything seemed to go against her, she remained strong. What will it take for you to support her with integrity? He tried not to show it, but the directness of Spick's challenge shook him. And that's facts, Scrappy said, nodding in agreement. If she had been carrying it, why is she still carrying it alone? Even though the comments were painful, they also revealed something that fans had been speculating about for months. Mendeecees' silence and Yandi's strength were frequently compared on social media, with many people claiming that their relationship's imbalance had been apparent for a while. Others defended him by claiming that everyone had a breaking point and that no one knew the complete story. When it appeared that the occasion couldn't get much better, Carly leaned in with another blast, heavier. Perhaps it has nothing to do with family, history, or love. Perhaps it has to do with trust. Perhaps Yandi no longer has the same level of faith in you. Perhaps that's the reason you sound so uncertain. Around the table, there were gasps. Her remarks' daring caused heads to shake and mouths to open. Mendeecees, his expression stiffened, and he narrowed his eyes at Carly with such intensity that it was obvious she had touched a nerve. He said, "You don't know what you're talking about," with a sharper edge than before. Carly wasn't finished, though, saying, "Don't sit here and act like you know my household." "I don't have to know your household. I can see," she remarked, raising her eyebrows while seeming to be innocent. "It's in your eyes." The altercation intensified, overlapping voices as Scrappy sought to calm things down, and Spice tried to refocus the conversation. But the harm was already done. Doubt had been sown, and viewers repeatedly relived the scene, analyzing each look, each pause, and each change in tone. Spice shook her head and leaned back in her chair as the ruckus began to calm down. "Look, this is all I'm saying at the end of the day. Regardless of what people say, the street will tell its own story if you don't address it, and you have no control once the streets begin to speak." Mendeecees, obviously worn out, rubbed his temples. However, he was unable to ignore the veracity of her statement. Once rumors got going, he knew better than anyone. Managing the story became almost not possible. Still, his silence served as a shield, and the pressure of expectation was beginning to erode that wall. The discussion never came to a complete conclusion as the evening went on. The questions continued to swirl. As the cameras focused on Mendeecees' distressed face, the tension never really let up. Unquestionably, the sequence ended with the impression that something greater, something that would eventually push the truth out into the open, was simmering. The rumors persisted the following day. The group of pals had already heard about the altercation. By dawn, followers were analyzing every moment of what transpired on all platforms. While some sped down the video to highlight Mendeecees' twitchy hands beneath the table, others concentrated on Spice's intense gaze, which seemed to cut through all justifications. The line that marked the occasion was, "So are you together or not?" which went viral online and was repeatedly snipped and played back. But when Mendeecees awoke, the storm was still going strong. His phone was constantly buzzing with messages from old acquaintances, family members, and even calls from people he hadn't spoken to in years. It was the same thing that everyone wanted to know. What was actually going on between Yandi and him? His face was dark and unreadable as he sat silently in his living room, browsing through the never-ending stream of posts. In contrast, Yandi appeared to be communicating silently of her own. Quotes like strength, loyalty, and keeping one's peace abound throughout her social media account. Fans made the connection right away, assuming that these mysterious posts were directed at the circumstance. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. In particular, was a remark that shocked some online. Supporters argued on whether she was teasing Mendeecees or just shielding herself from the mayhem. Still energized from the previous evening, Spice and Scrappy reconnected with the gang. Recalling Mendeecees' expression, Spice shook her head. She informed Scrappy, he wasn't just uncomfortable, her tone was forceful. He was concealing something, as evidenced by his constant sidestepping and his inability to look us in the eye. There was something more significant going on, and he simply didn't want to disclose it. At first, Scrappy wasn't persuaded. Perhaps he was simply fed up with everyone in his company. he suggested. But even he couldn't deny the weight of his friend's words the previous evening. However, you're correct about one thing, Scrappy acknowledged. He has never looked so lost before. Normally, he remains steady no matter what. Last night, he appeared to be unsure of his identity. Carly, meanwhile, was relishing the drama, calling up a few friends and filling every detail with Shilly. I thought he was going to melt in the seat as she came at him. Her laughter only fueled the narrative further, ensuring that by afternoon, everyone connected to the cast had heard about the confrontation. Mendeecees' silence only deepened the story. Girl, he couldn't even say yes or no. She laughed into the phone. Intrigue. He chose to remain silent rather than make a statement or defend himself online, almost daring the rumors to consume him. However, this allowed others to fill in the blanks. And there were soon wild theories going around, with some claiming he and Yandi were living apart, and others claiming he had been seen with another woman. Some even implied that the couple had already split up months prior and were just hiding it from the cameras. Amid all of this turmoil, Yandi sat with her close friends, her face composed but her heart obviously heavy. One of her friends asked bluntly, "Are you going to address what everybody's saying?" Yandi slowly shook her head, saying, "People will always speak, but two cannot allow their opinions to dictate my truth. I'll talk when the time is appropriate. Let them ponder until then." When Spice chose to face Yandandi head-on, the tension spilled over. Spice met her later that week and wasted no time in saying, "Sis, you know I love you, but I can't sit back and watch this mess unfold without asking." Her words were strong, but her eyes revealed the storm that was building beneath the surface. "Where are you all, actually? Mendeecees is behaving as though we are unaware of it. We've been through more than anyone could fathom," Yi stated cautiously, taking a big breath and folding her hands neatly in her lap. "I don't need to describe every detail to the world, but I will say this. It's not easy being married. Additionally, when every imperfection is accentuated because you live in the spotlight. We're working through the situation, but it's not easy." Refusing to let the debate finish so easily, Spice leaned in. "However, he isn't figuring things out when he can't even tell if you are all together. That means that everyone is free to make their own decision." For the first time, Yandi's composure faltered as her face tensed. "You believe I'm ignorant that? Do you believe the whispers are not audible to me? Look at the remarks. I hear everything. However, there are instances when remaining silent until you're prepared to battle again is the only option to preserve what's left." There was silence in the room. Spice was looking at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance. She wanted to exert more effort, but Yandi's voice's fragility held her back from exerting excessive pressure. But the harm was already done. Even the best defense could not fully hide the story's flaws, which were already evident. Every little detail was noticed by the fans. Timelines were inundated with footage of Mendeecees' hesitancy and Yandi's cryptic posts, leading onlookers to declare that the couple's era was coming to a definitive end. Others maintained their optimism, claiming that 20 years of love couldn't be ruined by a few heated exchanges. With each side believing they understood the truth better than anybody else, the gap between the fans widened. Scrappy, meantime, tried a softer strategy and caught up to Mendeecees once more. Quietly, he added, "Man, I ain't here to pressure you. However, you should speak with someone if you're in pain because the manner you departed that evening didn't look good. It appears that you are drowning, unwilling to seek assistance." Mendy sat in silence for a long time before answering. "When everyone is staring at you as if you know everything and you don't, it's difficult, Scrap. I have no idea how to solve it. I'm not even sure if it's fixable. I don't know if desiring is enough anymore, but all I know is that I don't want to lose her." Scrappy wasn't prepared for the impact of those words. Seeing uncertainty on his friend's expression was one thing, but hearing it expressed so directly was quite another. Scrappy realized for the first time that there was more to the situation than gossip and drama. It was the narrative of a man divided between allegiance, history, and the dreadful prospect of losing everything he had worked so hard to achieve. However, unresolved tension is what reality TV is all about, and this drama was far from over. The gap between Yandi and Mendeecees became increasingly apparent as the days went by, and those in their immediate vicinity found it difficult to determine whether to intervene or to back off. Everyone wondered if the truth would be revealed in a confession, a brawl, or a painful farewell, as rumors of treachery, loyalty, and secrets swirled in all directions. The tension only increased over the course of the weeks, escalating from casual discussions into intense conjecture in all circles, related to the program. A contentious dinner conversation between Spice, Scrappy, and Mendeecees had now escalated into the season's pivotal plot point. Every fan believed they were the only ones who had discovered the truth, and every cast member had an opinion. No matter how much Mendes tried to hide behind silence, the posters persisted, the whispers persisted, and the storm would not stop. It was no longer just pals, and it was family. In a harsh tone, one of Mendes's family members drew him away at a family get-together. "You can't keep running away even though we love you. People are raving about you, Yandi, and your marriage." This has evolved beyond television. Respect is at issue. Before someone else does it for you, clear the air. Even after hearing the words, he had trouble settling in. In contrast, Candy exuded poise, yet those closest to her could sense the flaws in her demeanor. She ultimately gave in to her emotions during a little gathering with her sisters. She uttered, "Do you know what it's like?" while crying. To defend your family day in and day out, just to watch it disappear in front of the cameras. To view the man you sacrificed everything for him to act as though he doesn't even know how valuable you are. Even if her sisters consoled her, the anguish was evident and unadulterated. Determined to bring the truth to light, Spice arranged a meeting with Mendeecees and Yandy since she couldn't bear to keep things quiet. As the couple sat across from one another, the cameras recorded every 10th second. Their eyes avoided one another, their bodies rigid. Spice didn't waste any time. "You two have been dancing around this for far too long, you know. The streets told their own tale already. Tell us if this is true or if you are all acting for the cameras." After what seemed like an eternity of stillness, Yandi finally said something. Even though she spoke calmly, every word was filled with agony. "I don't have to act like anybody. Everything I own is the result of my own hard work, and no one will ever know how much I've carried. But I can't bear it alone indefinitely." Her gaze shifted to Mendes as she waited for him to eventually stand next to her and speak to her, rather than remain silent. Mendes' jaw tightened as he shifted in his chair. He whispered, "I never asked you to carry it all." His voice was thick. "But now that you've taken that burden, you're throwing it back as if I never tried. Since I'm not shouting it from the rooftops, it doesn't matter that I've been there in ways that no one has seen." Spice cut in abruptly. "However, it does matter because she is sitting here expressing that she feels lonely. Do you believe that the fans are interested in the invisible? They are concerned regarding their emotions. And at the moment, you're trapped on pause while everyone else feels like Yandi fighting alone." Mendes's eyes blazed with a mixture of shame and rage as the words pierced. It seemed for a moment that he may finally blow up. Instead, he sprang up suddenly and paced the floor while clenching his fists. "I'm sick of everyone claiming to be more knowledgeable about my marriage than me. I'm sick of people asking if we want to do something together. This isn't amusement. This is my life." It became tense in the room. Yandandi's countenance was unreadable as he watched him. His explosion said more than her quiet did. After shaking his head, Scrappy, who was seated off to the side, finally spoke. "Hey, you can shout all you want, but the reality is what you're truly upset about. She's sliding away and you're afraid, but you're not sure how to stop it." The words struck Mendes more deeply than any allegation, and he froze. What he had refused to acknowledge, but which everyone thought was reinforced by his silence. In addition to losing his wife, he was afraid of losing the identity he had developed with her over the course of 20 years. Never missing her, Carly Chance smirked and leaned forward. Her voice was full with drama as she questioned softly, "So, is this the end of the fairy tale? Because it doesn't appear to be a happily ever after." Everyone else in the room gasped and gave her words sidelong glances as they lingered in the air. At last, Yandi spoke up once more, this time with more force. "This isn't about fairy stories. This has to do with honesty, loyalty, and respect. Additionally, I feel as though I have been supporting this marriage on my own at the moment. I'm not sure how long I can continue. Even Carly, who for once had nothing sarcastic to say, was silenced by the vulnerability in her tone. The fans who watched from home were in disbelief. Timelines on Twitter bursting with reactions in an instant. While some criticized Mendy for not stepping up, others supported Yandi for her bravery, and still others held out hope that the pair could go through this difficult time together. Memes including screenshots of his silence along with captions like, "Say it with your chest," and "Confounded husband energy" were all over the internet. The scene ended with strong feelings lingering in the air rather than any resolve. Spice shook her head in shock as she glanced around the table. The world is going to sort this out for you if you guys don't, and there's no turning back once it occurs. Yandi and Mendeecees looked at each other for a long, complex moment. The sort of glance that contained 2 decades worth of history. Exhaustion, love, forgiveness, and betrayal all at once. It was a gaze that conveyed nothing and everything. A glance that left people yelling at their screens for unanswered questions. Every step they took as they left the room was captured on camera. No fight was as loud as the questions that remained unanswered. Was this the start of the end, or were they still together? Even they didn't know. However, what was certain. The drama had blown up. They had put pressure on it, and it was no longer possible to overlook the flaws in their story. Fans demanded clarification, blogs analyzed every frame, and gossip sites published fanciful speculations about what would happen next as the consequences extended beyond the cast. One thing was certain, regardless of whether this was the end of a romantic relationship or just another storm they would weather together. The globe couldn't stop watching as season 13 reached its most memorable moment. The moment that has everyone talking is right there. The altercation that transformed a routine evening into one of the season's most memorable encounters. Scrappy and Spice didn't mince words. Mandy was in the hot seat like never before after Carly fueled the flames. Yandy's fortitude, her quiet, and her subliminal clues simply fueled the flames, leaving fans divided on the true nature of what's happening behind closed doors. Could this truly be the tipping point after 20 years of love, family, and commitment, or is this just another storm that will pass? The suspense is maintained precisely because, in reality, no one can say for sure. Will Yandi conclude that she's carried the burden, or will Mendeecees finally come forward and disprove the skeptics? Enough wait? Is Spice correct to ask for clarification, or did she go too deeply into personal affairs? Naturally, is Carly agitating the situation merely for the cameras, or did she unintentionally reveal something genuine? These are the queries that are reverberating on social media, splitting followers and igniting never-ending discussions. We'd like to hear from you now. Do you think are we witnessing the demise of one of the most talked-about couples on the program, or can Yandi and Mendeecees weather this storm? Leave a comment below with your opinions. Join the discussion that is reverberating across the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta community, and make your voice heard. If you liked the breakdown, be sure to hit the like button. Turn on the notifications to be the first to know when the next update is released, and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss a single one. A dramatic moment occurs. I promise you won't want to miss what's about to happen. I want to be alone when I miss marriage. I'm not sure how long I can continue. Even Carly, who for once had nothing sarcastic to say, was silenced by the vulnerability in her tone. The fans who watched from home were in disbelief. Twitter timelines were immediately populated with responses. While some criticized Mendy for not stepping up, others supported Yandi for her bravery, and still others held out hope that the pair could go through this difficult time together. Memes including screenshots of his silence along with captions like "Say it with your chest" and "Confounded husband energy" were all over the internet.